Your identity is your most valuable possession. Protect it.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the channel. This is a very special video because this is a book that I've been dying to read for ages, and then finally I bought it in Forbidden Planet in Liverpool last summer, and now finally got around to doing it. So it took me a few months, but I've been spurred on by being part of the New Worlds November co-hosting. So this is a big shout out to the other co-hosts as well. So this is part of my New Worlds November videos, but this is just a review on a book, well, the first novella actually, the first novella by Nnedi Okorafor called Binti. So this is a trilogy of novellas. The first one is just called Binti. I'll talk about all three of them when I've read all three of them. I've just read the first one so far. It's very short actually, so I would have thought it was more of a short story than a novella, but that's fine. It gets called a novella everywhere. So anyway, it is very short, so if you're curious, it's not going to take much time to read it, but it is very special. It's I can't wait to read more of what Okorafor has written. It's really, really interesting. So I'm talking about that novella, but to do that, I will also be talking about the cultural content and anthropological content, if you like, of the novella and Binti herself. And that is a big part of the character of the book. So this came out in 2015. This is the whole trilogy. So this is all three of them, but it came out slightly different. So I'll just put up a little picture here of the three different covers that were used for the whole trilogy. But this is the one I found with all three of them, which is quite cool. There's also a little short story in there as well. So there's actually 4 stories in this book, which is quite cool. But just focusing on the first one, because that's the one I've read so far. It's a really interesting example of why science fiction can be so good at exploring really important deep themes while talking about identity and cultural significance, talking about alienation, talking about the idea of the other or the alien, and talking about coming of age. This is a bit of a coming of age story, so you can talk about that as well. But it's all set within a science fiction setting. And actually, on that point, I read this as part of New Worlds November because I'd heard that it was set in West Africa, but it's not really set in West Africa. It starts in West Africa, but it very quickly moves on, and most of it is set in space. Most of it is set on a spaceship. So it's probably more relevant to the second week prompt, but that don't matter. I'm still going to be talking about it now. So I was really keen to talk about it because it's so different and special, and part of that is because the importance and the impact on the story of Binti herself and the culture that she comes from, and how much that informs the text in the story, and how much that exploration of her own identity is part of the language in the book, and how any kind of threat to that identity or any confusion she comes across, or any feeling of feeling vulnerable, is reflected in different aspects of her culture, specifically a number of times her hair. So just to kind of clarify this a little bit more, Binti is part of the Himba tribe. So the Himba tribe are a tribe that are situated between Namibia and Angola, and that tribe are quite famously, if you know much about African people and African culture, sub-Saharan African culture, Himba tribe are very famous for the red colour of their skin that's produced by the rituals that they do every day to keep themselves clean. The Himba women, this is, the men don't do this, this is something that the women do, and to make sure that they look after their skin and their hair, because the area that they live in is susceptible to huge waves, very long waves of drought. So water is scarce, and they can go through a whole year without any water at all, any rain. So clearly they had to have an alternative to just using water for washing. So what they do is they have this paste that they use as a replacement for that, and this is part of their long-standing tradition. This has been just a big part of their culture, and this paste called ajitse, the ajitse paste is made from buttermilk and animal fat and ground stone from the okra stone, and those things together create this very aromatic paste that they can use to look after their skin and their hair. And the thing is, that ritual and the way that they look after themselves in that way, and that ritual that creates that look and that hair and the way they look after that hair is such a massive part of their identity, because it reflects their status, it reflects their age, it reflects what position they've got in the community, it reflects how healthy they are, how fertile they are. All sorts of different things are reflected in their hair. So this becomes a part of the text, because there's a big moment in the story when her identity is changed. I won't tell you why because it'd be spoilers, but it does have a huge effect on her own sense of self, and part of that is connected to the importance of their hair to the Himba tribe. So it's really, really interesting that you do learn a lot about the tribal culture, but it becomes a part of the narrative of the story as well. And this red colour on their skin and on their hair is also part of their idea of their connection to the land and their connection to the world and connection to each other. And the fact that they are tied to the land so much because they see the colour red as representing earth and blood. So those two things being connected to the colour red, that is another reason why the colour red on their skin and their hair is so important to them. So it becomes, you know, if you understand that and you know that that's where the sort of underlying implication of what's happening in the story is, then the impact is bigger. So that aspect of the book is really interesting. And basically Binti herself is a 16-year-old girl who's an expert harmonizer. So basically means she's a mathematician, really, really expert mathematician. And she's got the opportunity to go to Umza University, which is actually a planet. So it's another planet. And she sets off, and she's literally breaking a really important tradition. And she's upsetting the family by leaving the family and leaving the Himba tribe to go on this spaceship to go to this university. So she's the first person in her tribe to do it. And it's because she's this natural harmonizer and she's got this expert ability. And that comes into play as well. There's a couple of other key words that will be good, that if you understand what they mean, it won't throw you when you're reading it. So she has an Adan, which she uses to ends up being a really important part of communicating to this alien race that she encounters, and she doesn't really know how it works, how to use it. It's all a bit mysterious to her, but it becomes a really important device in the plot. And I think I get the impression that might develop as the novellas go on, and you can find out more about the Adan. But that is a really important part. So don't get thrown by that and think that that's another African term that you're not familiar with, because it's literally it's a device she's using, like a cell phone, that kind of thing, that she can use for that. And there's also the astrolabe. I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but that's how it looks. Astrolabe, could be astrolabe, the astrolabe, and that is another device that's used in it. And that's kind of historically, that is actually a thing that was historically used for astronomy and early mathematics. So that fits into the narrative anyway, but that's used a lot in the plot as well. And that's, again, a device that she uses to help her with her work and to help her with treeing. So treeing is when she needs to calm down, and she does these mathematical sums to calm down, because that's the way that her brain works. So treeing comes up a lot as well. So there's a few terms in it that are worth getting your head round, but the power of the story comes with the fact that her identity is shaken a few times, and she's going into this area that she's never been to before. She's leaving lots of things behind. She's leaving her people behind. She's leaving her family behind, and she knows she's upset them, but she has to go to this university because she knows that she really believes it's a really important thing to her. But what happens is a really dramatic and violent thing happens really early on in the story, and she's got to cope with the consequences of that. And there's kind of two sets of people that she's dealing with. There's the Kush, who are the other tribe that are threatening the Himba people, and just basically there's this antagonistic element to that. So they're humans, but then there's these aliens that they meet called the Medusa, and the Medusa are the main antagonists, and a lot of the story is about her dealing with the Medusa, and the Medusa trying to understand her. So I don't know if this tells you a lot. I don't want to say too much. It's only 53 pages long, so obviously there is a risk of spoiling things. But it's such a special book, and I love the way it's written. I love the way that her predicament, her feelings, her doubts, and ultimately, because it's all down to identity, her identity is so well explained, elaborated on, and you get this real emotive sense through the whole thing. So yeah, I'm definitely exploring the author more, and I can't wait to read the other two. And I kept coming back to it. I kept wanting to go back to the story because I wanted to know what was going to happen next. So it was only 50 pages, but actually I read it quite slowly because of just the way the week's gone. But yeah, really special. So I've seen a few people talk about this on BookTube, and it won the Hugo Award, it won the Nebula Award. She's highly praised, but now I know why. Fantastic stuff. And if you're talking about representation, you're talking about reading more diversely, you can't go wrong with this. I would say that I'd recommend this especially to people who like Becky Chambers. So if you've read the Wayfarer series, I think this gives you similar vibes. I think there's probably more plot in this, because Becky Chambers famously works with characters more than plot. There's lots of science fiction ideas in it, but not as much actually happens. Whereas this, there was quite a number of things that happened. Yeah, I don't want to spoil what happens after the really violent thing, but there's quite a lot that kind of is consequential to that. So, but I do think that's quite a comparable author. So if you do like Becky Chambers, you will really like Nnedi Okorafor. So check this out, Binti. Really good. I'm so impressed, and I can't wait to read more of her stuff. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. Let me know what you think of this if you read it, and if it's tweaked your curiosity. And I'll include this in my wrap up. I think I'm going to put this before I put up my first wrap up for New World's November, because I've read a few other stories as well. But I really couldn't wait to talk about this because it's very special. Thanks a lot. Bye.
Paint me a picture